Welcome to Buckets, brought to you by BetMGM, the king of sportsbooks. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network. This is your Monday Best Bets episode, as well as our weekly futures look. On today's show, we're going to break down all of the awards in the NBA, from MVP to Coach of the Year to Rookie of the Year to Defensive Player of the Year to Most Improved Player, all of the real awards. We're not talking about Clutch Award because that's a fake-ass fucking award, so we're not doing that this week. But all the other awards, we're going to do that. And to do that, I've got Jim Turvey, half of the Future Jays. The other half of the Future Jays, Joe Delera, is out this week because it's his birthday. And so Joe's going out to celebrate. Happy birthday, Joe Delera. Hope he's doing well and having a wonderful night with his significant other, enjoying his birthday. To fill in as a Future Jay night, we got the A.O. Watts in the house. Andrew O'Connor Watts is joining us. He'll help us out with some future looks. We're going to go through every award, and we're going to give you three things. Who's going to win it right now, what the best value on the board is right now, and then a nice long shot so you can have some of that tasty CLV that we all love to eat, because you can definitely eat CLV, right? But we'll do best bets first, and all the bets we talk about today can be found in the award-winning Action Network app. I make this plea, this beg, this plug every single time on this show. I really need to stress to you, though, that if you are a longtime listener of the show and you're like, yeah, the app, like, you are a better. You listen to the show, you bet sports, which means that you will get something out of the app. There's stuff in it that I spend every day doing that is not just like tracking picks or whatever. It's not just reading our articles. It's stuff like our pro reports. It's stuff like the signals. It's like, oh, where's the money coming in? It's seeing the line movement over time so you can notice what significant numbers came in and when, and you'll get these patterns down. There's a lot of cool shit that you can find in the app, which is why you should download it right now if you haven't. Also, make sure to check out our YouTube page. Go to youtube.com/The Action Network. You can catch a video version of this show, as well as all of our other great shows, our live shows. As a plug, The Favorites is having a live show for Wildcard Weekend this weekend at the Shepherd and the Knuckle in Jersey. Check out The Favorites page for more details on that, or check out the podcast or the podcast page. Make sure you check it out. If you are in the New York area, you want to go check it out, go join The Favorites for their live show for Wildcard Weekend on Saturday and Sunday. Okay, we'll do best bets right at the top. We'll roll through these best bets, and then we'll do some futures looks, boys. Andrew O'Connor Watts, what's your best bets for the Monday slate?
I've got the Clippers in the first half.
Okay, Clippers first half. The number just popped as we were recording this. Full game is -6, so we'll go ahead and we'll give you -3 for that one. We'll just cut it in half. Might be 3.5 potentially in that one, but we'll give you
that. Works for me.
Jim Turvey, what are your best bets for the Monday slate?
Yeah, I've got the Rockets +4.5 and on the money line as well, and I'm going to be on the Clippers as well. I like them for the full game at that 6.5 number.
I've got the Bulls team total over versus the Charlotte Hornets, and I'm going to be on the Rockets +5 tentatively, but we got to talk through that one because I have some concerns on that one. We'll talk about those as we go along here. I'll give the Bulls cap real quick on this. No Gordon Hayward, no PJ Washington in this game. So there's absolutely like the Hornets are going to struggle to score in this one, as they tend to do. Bulls games have not necessarily been dynamite on the over as of lately because they're playing a little bit better just overall, and they've played a pretty medium pace. And the Hornets are not necessarily an over, but here's the big key with the Hornets. The Hornets defense absolutely blows, and their opponent team total over differential average is 11 this season. That's high. And so we've got a Chicago Bulls team that is vibing, that is playing better, that is playing more cohesive basketball. I have this projected for the total number way over. I have them projected at 119. This number is going to be well below that. So this number is kind of like a weird number in the market to me. I was kind of like, I don't understand. I want to be very cautious with this number for a number of reasons. At 217, I don't want to play the over in the event that the Charlotte Hornets absolutely bottom out, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to play the Bulls team total over here, Jim, in the hopes that the Bulls will be able to at least put up a big number on a bad defense. I think it's possible that the Bulls let down versus the Hornets without Hayward and PJ Washington as well as LaMelo Ball. But even if they let down, I think it's on the defensive end, not the offensive one. I think Chicago puts up a bigger number than what this number projects the team total to be.
Yeah, I've been on the Bulls. The Bulls have been one of the teams I have bet, I feel like, the most this year, which is kind of strange. I don't carry myself like a Bulls supporter very much, but it just seems like the market has been a little bit off on them, especially the last month or so when they've really been playing a lot better. But this number is a little bit high for me in terms of the spread. So I think it's an interesting approach that you're taking, looking at the team total specifically, because I kind of lean towards the Hornets for the spread as a whole. But I can kind of get there more if we're looking at team total. So I didn't dig into the exacts on team total. I do lean towards the Hornets, but that for me, that doesn't tell me enough to get me off of the team total per se.
Yeah, I mean, I've got this projected at 4 or 3.5 rather. So like I've only got this at 3.5. So I've technically got like a 2.5 point edge here on Charlotte, but I can't get there with the injuries, right? Like Hayward.
Yeah.
Anytime I want to bet Charlotte, Gordon Hayward has to play. Like I have to have Gordon Hayward, and if I do not get him, I'm just all right. I'm moving on. And it's not necessarily that Hayward impacts the defense in a significant way here. Their over-under is pretty much even in the games that Hayward has missed. Same thing with PJ Washington here. So there's no big edge on that, but it does to me I can't get to a spot where I think that the Charlotte Hornets are going to be able to keep what is a decent Bulls, especially as of late with Kobe White playing the way he is, with Zach LaVine back. I can't get to a spot where they're going to hold them under what this number projects it as. A.O. Watts, you got any disagreements there?
No, you mentioned wanting to play the Hornets only with Gordon Hayward. How about more than one of their starters?
Yeah.
LaMelo out, Mark Williams out, PJ Washington out, and Gordon Hayward all out. It's tough to back this team right now. I definitely was leaning towards the Bulls when I was looking at the slate. And, just to go back to the Action Network app thing real quick, one thing I use the Action Network app for is seeing what other people are on. And I saw that Jim was on the other side of the Bulls today. And historically, going against Jim has not worked out very well for me. So I now use that as a little bit of a check, a box to check. Is Jim on the other side? No? Good. If he is, then maybe I stay away. So this was a stay away for me. But yeah, other than that, I don't have much.
All right, so let's talk this Clippers game. So the Clippers are currently, as we're recording this on Sunday night, they are up 73-72 with 2:26 remaining in the third on the Lakers. So back-to-back spot for the Clips, back-to-back spot for the Suns. This is a home and home back-to-back for the Clippers, as they are playing, obviously, quote unquote away at the Lakers here. So they're in the same building. So it's a home back-to-back spot. Kawhi Leonard has played in most of the back-to-backs this season when he's been available. They have not rested guys on back-to-backs. Kevin Durant returned tonight for the Phoenix Suns, but this is a back-to-back spot, so don't know what that's going to look like. This number is 6.5. Andrew, I agree. You said this pre-show, and I kind of agree with you. This feels like, at the very least, it's a half and half no KD number, if not a full no KD number here, with it being 6.5 for the Clippers.
Yeah, it looks to me like like you said, they're at least worried about KD playing the second half of this back to back. That is not even really why I liked this spot for the Clippers. Obviously no KD is even better, but for me, it's just how the Clippers have been playing. And it's kind of doesn't matter if they win tonight or lose tonight spot. The Clippers have been really good after a win in the first half. They're 14-8 ATS in the first half after a win. And if they lose tonight against the Lakers, I like it as a motivational bounce back spot at home again. So to me, this was kind of result proof, and not to mention a numbers play. I have this in the first half without KD close to like -5. So there's some leeway.
Jim, do you think this is a full KD's out or a half KD's out?
I think this is a half KD is out. We were kind of trying to talk through what we were imagining the line would be. I thought it was going to open around Clippers 4.5. I was going to like that to to up around 6 if KD played, and up to around 9 if he's out. So I think they're splitting the difference. We see this often with star players who are worth, multiple points to the spread. When there's a chance that they're going to be out, they kind of split the difference. And I think that's exactly what's happening here. I think if he does sit, it gets to around 8.5. I think if he plays, which I would be surprised, I think maybe it's skewing a little bit that way. I think it might only go like maybe 5.5 or 5. But I'm really with Andrew on a lot of this. To me, the number likely isn't going to move far enough here that I won't be on the Clippers side. They're really, really hitting their stride. Andrew talked a little bit about it, but they've got the best net rating in the last 2 weeks per cleaning the glass. So if you take out that garbage time, they've been the best team over the last 2 weeks. They've been the third best since the start of December, and ever since that James Harden, when he arrived and they had that James Harden losing streak right when he got there, which is we all got a good laugh at. But when they stopped that, ever since they've been the 5th best team by net rating. You mentioned that they're playing their stars back to back this year. Kawhi's played 30 games. Paul George played 32. Harden hasn't missed a game since he's come to the Clippers. Phoenix, on the other hand, does a lot of resting of their stars. We've seen that time and time again this year. They also have their depth is a little bit dinged up right now as well. Eric Gordon's out. Nasir Little wasn't playing on Sunday either. So I just really like how this Clippers team matches up with the Suns. In general, they kind of have those two-way guys at talented positions where Phoenix has incredible offensive players, but don't maybe have the same defensive capabilities on the wing that the Clippers stars do. So I'm gonna be playing this up to Clippers -9 if there's no Durant. If Durant does play, I would play it to Clippers -6.
Very nice. Yeah, I have this. This is one of those where I don't want to say what I have this. I'll just say that there's no number to get to where I will not like the Clippers in the spot. So I'm gonna be on this as well. It is kind of funny that we're like, they've just been phenomenal. Like they're number 2, and they're currently down 4 points to the Los Angeles Lakers.
I know, not ideal.
Like every time Jim would say another positive stat about them, the Lakers would score. Like every single time. Let's talk about Rockets, and I'll throw in this other one that I'll lean on. So Rockets are 5-point dogs tomorrow on the road versus the Miami Heat. No Jimmy Butler. So I originally had this as like a best bet. I'm gonna move this to like I'm gonna play it, but it's gonna be for a fraction. Based off of no Tari Eason and no Dylan Brooks. I actually care about Eason more. Eason is one of the most impactful defensive players in the league in regards to how the team defends with him on the court versus off. It's been an absolutely massive differential this season, to the point where like if Eason had more blocks and rebounds, I'd be talking about him a little bit later on. And if he started, he's that impactful. Like Eason will be a DPOY contender in his career. So it makes me a little bit shy of it, but the other problem here is that the Rockets are not great on the road. They've stabilized. They were terrible on the road, and now they're just like not great. So it makes me a little nervous here, just based off of the fact that you're getting Miami at home. Rockets, like the Rockets are either like really impressive in a win, or they completely shit the bed, and they're more likely to do that on the road. I will bet it, but I am going to back off a little bit with the Eason still being out. Jim, why do you like this spot in particular?
Yeah, you talk through, some of the parts I really like about it. Most like this number, I just do not have this high, but I also am targeting the money line in part because what you said that the Rockets are a team that can kind of, fade in spots, but, kind of surprise with an upset win here and there. And to me, this game kind of screams Heat take the lead first half. They've been one of the best first half teams in the league this season. Whereas the Rockets, they've been kind of slow starters, but they've been really good down the stretch. So this is an opportunity for those reverse correlated same game parlays where you do Heat first half, Rockets to win the game, or maybe just to cover the spread if you think maybe that fourth quarter will be a great chance for them to kind of backdoor cover on the spread. I really like those reverse correlated ones. There's times where I think that they are actually correlated, and the game script can actually work a little bit to your favor. So just to the point on Miami, so I mentioned that they were great in the first half. and they kind of slow down from there. And it kind of goes by quarter. So I just wanted to rattle these off really quick. Their net rating by quarter. So they're plus 9.6 in the first quarter, outstanding. Plus 5.7 in the second quarter, still very, very strong. 0.7 plus 0.7 in the third quarter, so about average. And then minus 11.5 in the fourth quarter. This is something Brian Fonseca has been on all year. These Heat fourth quarters are a great chance to fade them. And against the Rockets, who are 20-14 against the spread in the fourth, it really sets up for a nice game script here where you could potentially get Miami getting out to a lead. So you could look to live bet it, or you could do one of those same game parlays I was mentioning earlier that, theoretically gets you a reverse correlated, extra little bump there in the number, but it's really a game script that's highly feasible. So I'll be looking at that exact price. I'll kind of shop that around and then, keep an eye out in the app because that's probably a play I'll be going to tomorrow for this game.
This is a stat we'll talk a lot more about when the playoffs roll around. It's the Matt Mitchell stat, which says that if you're going to bet dog in the NBA playoffs, you need to bet the money line because if they cover, they win outright a huge proportion of the time. Early in the season, this trend was actually not showing up, and I was kind of like, that's weird. And I was like, I'm going to give it some more time. It's stabilized. Dogs this season that cover have won outright 64% of the time. So if you're depending on the spot, depending on the number, this is if you're going to bet the spread, especially a number like this where it's inside of 2 possessions, you probably should be betting the money line as well, just for long-term ROI. Okay, let's talk. I do want to mention Thunder Wizards here real quick. The number currently in the market for Thunder Wizards, as I check the Action Network page, 240. There's a 246 in the market. It's already down to 244 in some spots. I love the under from a model perspective, but I could not find any trends to get me there. So the problem is that OKC had that phenomenal game versus Boston. They go on the road with that hilarious game in Atlanta where the books were just like, go on, bet the Thunder. They're only 1-point favorites. We know you want, go ahead, bet the Thunder. And they cleaned up on that one. Then they go to Brooklyn and they also lose because they give up a huge number. Their defense has been bad in the past 2 games coming off that Celtics loss, right? The Thunder are an over team on the road. The majority of their games have gone over. The Wizards are an over team at home this season. Both teams have over 50% when the total is above 240 this season. That's the over goes over 50% with totals above 240. Thunder, 7 of their last 9 are overs. So I was looking for confirmation bias. I was like, okay, I got a big edge on the number. Let's go find some trends, make myself feel better. And all of the trends were like, you should not. You should leave this alone. And so I'm going to leave it alone. I have a strong lean to the under, but I am too chicken shit to bet it. Andrew, you got thoughts?
I had the exact same thought process that you did. My model has this a lot lower, like 235.3. And yeah, the same exact thing. I was like, I can't really find a reason beyond just the number to bet it. Looking a little bit closer, I mean, the Wizards offense is terrible. That's a good reason. But so is their defense. So that kind of, cancels that out somewhat. I will say if you are going to pull the trigger, it's probably more of a pace thing. And the Wizards offense just not being able to do anything against the Thunder defense.
Yeah, maybe there's probably an angle there, like with the Bulls, right, where you can take a Wizards underplay. But again, my problem is I'm just like, well, if OKC's having a blip on their defense, that happens to teams. It's not bad. It's just like I talk about this a lot. Like I talk about this a lot, and then last week I ignored that advice a lot, and it was fucking stupid. Where I talk pretty consistently about like pay attention to the short term trends. It's a reason to stay away from a game. Like you're betting the NBA. You have all these nights. We have 4 more months of basketball, guys. Like it's fine. You could pass on a game just because there's like a recent trend. And the Thunder giving up big numbers to the Hawks and Nets. The Wizards are not the Hawks and they're not the Nets. But they're probably closer to the Hawks and Nets than some other teams. And so I definitely want to go ahead and stay away on that. It is futures time. To recap our best bets, I've got Bulls team total over. Andrew has Clippers first half. Jim and I are going to be on Rockets +5, him more so than me. and Jim is going to lay. You're going to lay the 6.5 with the Clippers. Yes, Jim.
Yeah.
Okay. That rounds up our best bets for Monday. Let's move on. Let's talk about some awards. So we are closer to the halfway point. Everyone kind of thinks like the All-Star break is halfway point. Not so. That's about 50 games in. We're gonna hit like the midway mark here in the next 2 weeks. So it's a good time to kind of evaluate, and we like to do this at the beginning of the month to evaluate where the market is at. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna give who we think is the most likely to win, where the best value is. So if like you were gonna put a bet in, and we actually think like this can win, and it's the best number right now in the market. And that can be the favorite, and that will probably be mentioned here in the first one. And then we're going to give a long shot bet that's essentially like you're going to get CLV on this. Like this number will be shorter by the end of the season than it is right now. You can't, if you could eat CLV, you would be a very full better. Let's start with most valuable player. So Joel Embiid is obviously the favorite in the market, given his just absolutely incredible scoring performance. This is the best season of his career. We'll talk a little bit about some of the pitfalls that may befall him. One book in particular, he's plus 210. Nikola Jokic is plus 250. We've got Shea Gilgeous-Alexander rattling around about plus 400. Luka's plus 500. Giannis plus 1900. Tatum 3400, and so on. Jim, Andrew, I assume we can all assume that if the voting ended today, the most likely person to win would be Joel Embiid. Do we agree on that?
I guess we like have to, right? So the straw poll came out, and so, like you're right. If it's this second, I think we do have to. But I still bristle at the idea because I was okay with giving it to Embiid last year because I did think it was fair to say to look at the bigger picture and say I don't want to give someone a third straight MVP until they have won in the finals. How on earth is that argument going to be used to give a second straight MVP to someone who hasn't reached the conference final? I feel like I'm losing my mind, but it's obvious it's a different voting block. Not everyone used the same logic I had in terms of giving that award last year, clearly. But I do feel like I'm taking crazy pills that Embiid could win it this year. It's beyond reason to me.
This is hilarious. I'm going to be really serious with you. I had this conversation with a voter. Okay. It's one voter. It's one voter of 100. I had this conversation with a voter, and he said, well, I think we all learned last year that we shouldn't hold the players to this type of standard. I was like, so let me get this straight. You didn't give it to the guy you should have given it to last year, and you all looked like idiots after Joel Embiid once again flamed out in the second round, as he always does. While Nikola Jokic, who had already made a conference finals, mind you, and had less playoff baggage, won a title. And that's what spurred you to realize that you were wrong, which allows you to once again give it to Joel Embiid. And he was like, yeah. And I was like, okay, all right. That's fine.
But isn't that just, I mean, my thing is you shouldn't give it to a person based on a playoff performance. You shouldn't. It's a regular season award.
Correct.
So I think what happened is last year was just a bad move by everyone. Like everybody voted for Joel Embiid,
including Jim Turvate,
voted incorrectly based on, for the reasons that they did. It's definitely was justifiable. I'm not saying he didn't deserve it, but all of those people that have buyer's remorse now, I think that's stupid to have that buyer's remorse based on playoff performance. So
I agree.
I do think that we should just be looking at the regular season.
I agree.
Jokic didn't care. He actively was like tanking the award towards the end of the season. He didn't deserve to win based on that. And now that may have been dictated by the narrative. Like I think he saw the narrative and was like, whoa, yikes.
Here's the thing is like, he tanked the last month of the season. He was still better than Joel Embiid. Like
Fair.
That's the problem. I actually think I if I had a vote, it would have gone to Giannis. It legitimately would have gone to Giannis last year. So Jim, I do want to ask you this though. Okay. So we did most likely to win, right? Which is like, I should have like very clearly specified this, which is like, if the award was voted today, because that actually is different from most likely to win.
Gotcha.
I know what you mean, and you're right. I mean, we, like I said, we literally saw the straw poll result. So like I just am having trouble getting there. But you're right.
Let's say that you're right. Let's say that you're right, and there's going to be because one thing is it's very easy to say Joel in January, And then when it gets to
Yeah.
be March and it's like, are you really going to vote for Joel as the most valuable player a second time without a single conference finals appearance and about 1,700 cases of basketball diarrhea in the playoffs? Are you really going to do that? So that would that'll become a conversational point. My question for you though is, if I told you, if I came from the future and I'm like, I'm not going to tell you anything except who wins MVP, and you're like, but what about this, that, and the other, the important world events? I'm like, no, fuck you. I'm only telling you MVP. And I tell you that Joel Embiid does not win. Who do you think wins?
So we can kind of parlay this into maybe the next topic, but I think it's Shea. And I think in part it is because of the exhausting nature of having done Embiid and Jokic for years upon years now. And I think, if to look at the advanced stats, it really is a 3-man race. And in some, Shea is right there. He really should be at the plus 200-ish mark, or maybe they should all be plus 300. But he has numbers for numbers that can go with both of those guys right now. If you look by EPM, he's ahead of Jokic. He's right there with Embiid. BPM, he's a little bit behind those two, but on-off stuff, I mean, he is having such a good season. And the Thunder, I really don't see them slowing down. The only thing that I think would slow them down would be an injury to him, which then would take him out of the award in general. But he's not missing games. He's playing at an outstanding level. And I think that he is both the best value. And I think you distilled it really well. I think if this actually, the season did end today, say we had another pandemic and the season did end today and people actually had to vote for MVP, like you said, I think it's really easy to say something right now. If it was suddenly going to be the vote of record, I don't think that Embiid would. Maybe I'm just a stubborn person. I don't think that the voters would give it to Embiid if that's the vote of record. And I do think that Shea is the guy.
I have an incredible stat for you, Jim. Guess how many games Joel Embiid has played on the road versus a team over 100.
I think it might literally be one. Yes.
Game. Do you know who it was against?
Okay, wait, no, I think I do because I was looking this up for. Is it?
Was it at the Thunder?
It was either Wolves or Celtics, maybe.
It was the Thunder.
Oh, was it? Yeah. Look at you, Andrew.
He
nice.
Was only willing to play versus a 208-pound rookie on the road. Look, it's smart as hell what they're doing, which is he's beating the shit out of, they got good wins versus the Celtics and the Wolves at home. I am a Sixers buyer. Okay. I put in a bet on them to win the Eastern Conference and the Clippers to win the West today. I had that's tracked in there. I'm a believer because of Nick Nurse, but they are absolutely gaming this for him to win the award again. And that's fine. They want to do that. It's good that he wants to win. That's going to help, I think, but he's going to have to balance this because eventually someone will be like, hey, so Embiid literally hasn't played anyone on the road. He's going to have to do this a little bit. I agree that Shea is the best value at plus 400. That's mine for best value is Shea is going to be, I talk about this a lot where there's the beat writers, the TV people, the international reporters, and the analysts, and they're not all the same people. Some people are closer to some than others. I do think the TV people will all go for Embiid, and they will be hard stuck on him to a certain degree. There's a 4-letter network in particular that has strong ties to both Joel individually and the agency that represents him. 2, the analysts, though, and the beat writers will probably either split or lean Shea. And so, this could get really dicey. Notably, the Thunder are only a half game back of the Sixers in standings. Shea has bounced. He and Embiid have bounced back and forth on some of the major numbers like BPM and EPM. So they're kind of right there. There's a long way to go. There's a lot of Shea has an injury history. Embiid has an injury history. Andrew, what was your pick for the best value on the board?
I had Shea for best value as well. And part of that was too, is that, if it ended right now, I do think Joel is probably the one that wins it just because, he's, like you said, he's timed this and kind of picked his spots perfectly. He's currently 16 straight games with 30 plus points, which is a very MVP kind of stat or streak, to be going for. Oh, look at how many 30+ point games he had.
Yeah.
But I mean, I believe he's on pace for 65.1 games played this season if he keeps doing it this way. So he has plenty of room to not skip all the games that he doesn't want to play, but he's at some point it's going to run out and he's not going to be eligible because the minimum games played is, if I'm not mistaken, is 65 games.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about long shots for value. I'll go first. Mine's Kawhi Leonard, 95-1. Is that yours, Jim?
Yeah.
We gotta talk about these before so I can pick different ones. I'm always torn between should we do it live so you're like the reactions are
it's fun to do live, yeah.
Or should we do it? Should we talk about it so I can avoid things like this? Look, he's top 10 in EPM and BPM. He's playing the best defense of his career. The Clippers are an absolutely like we've talked about, they're a juggernaut. Again, I just said something positive. Christian Wood just scored. They're down 4. So there's all these kind of ways in which it's a problem that they're like a really good team that is going to be a huge problem for teams this season. I've got huge division exposure to them already, but I'll just say that it is kind of tough because I think PG was the best player on that team for the first month, but since then it's been Kawhi every single night, and the Harden lineup seem to be actually accentuating how good Kawhi is. And so if the Clippers keep this up, which is a lot to do, but if the Wolves were to tail off a little bit and the Thunder were to tail off a little bit and the Nuggets keep going roughly around their pace, the Clippers could theoretically steal a 1 seed. And that would change this conversation a lot. And if you're wondering, like, is Kawhi? Yeah, but it's Kawhi. He never plays that many games. He hasn't missed that many. He just hasn't. He has not missed that many games. And so he's well within line here to make this award. That's why I like him. If I was going to bet a long shot, it would be on Kawhi at 95-1. Andrew, his stat profile is never going to match up. It would have to be like the most narrative-y of all narrative awards, excluding last year, which was ridiculousness. Like, it would just have to literally be, this guy is so good. We all acknowledge him as like the Clippers have been the, they would even, I think it would even be tough if the Celtics finished 65 plus games or wins. If they get to like 60 plus wins and the Clippers finish with like 58, that might even be a tough conversation, but Kawhi is good enough to at least be in this discussion.
He's definitely good enough. I didn't really look at him just because he doesn't fit that profile, age, all of those things that you and Brandon talked about on the How to Bet MVP podcast. He doesn't quite fall in there, but from a team perspective, I think the Clippers are going to finish with a really good record. Kawhi, as you mentioned, he has been playing those back-to-backs. I think it's a solid pick. I went a little bit longer and I went a little bit less likely for mine. So
we'll get there. Yeah. We'll get there. Jim, what are your thoughts on why you have Kawhi as your long shot here?
Not only did we agree, but you basically read verbatim my note section here. The only thing I will say is that from an eye test, he has looked better and better and better as the season gets along, which I think is great. It seems like he is actually healthy, and like as I say this, where he's playing right now, I probably just jinxed it into infinity by saying it out loud. But he looks really good. He's looking better. He looked a little like. He always looks a little robotic, but he looked like very kind of like motiony at the beginning of the season. He looks a lot smoother right now. So, maybe we could even see a little bit more production. You're right that he's never going to have the counting stats that some of these other guys will have. But again, this is the CLV that you can't eat. So it's perfect for him to be the pick here.
All right. Andrew, what's your long shot?
Well, it's De'Aaron Fox, 60-1. Again, it's CLV you can't eat, right? We're gonna go to bed hungry. Yeah. We're going to bed hungry, but here's the thing. He has a massive impact on the Kings offense. He is top 10 in EPM. not quite high enough. He's going to have to climb a little higher if he wants to be seriously in the conversation. But he's improved his shooting significantly. He's averaging 29.2 points per game on 38.9 from 3-point range on 8.5 per game. So he's got a plus 29 expected wins on cleaning the glass. He just checks he checks the age range box. He checks a lot of those boxes that, you're going to bet it. It's going to get smaller and he's not going to win. And also, by the way, don't check his box score from tonight because it goes against everything I just said.
Okay, we got 2 servings of Kawhi and a serving of De'Aaron Fox. Should be able to get some tasty CLV on those. All right, let's move to Coach of the Year because we think this one's going to be pretty interesting. Most likely to win right now, the odds at one book currently. Mark Daigneault's plus 130, Chris Finch is plus 250, Jamal Mosley plus 750, Joe Mazzulla plus 850, Rick Carlisle plus 2300, along with Nick Nurse. Tyronn Lue is 25-1, Udoka is 30-1, Kids 55-1, Willie Green's 55-1, Eric Spoelstra is 85-1, and so on and so forth. Do we have any disagreements that right now, if we were to vote today and for the rest of the, projecting out the rest of the season, that Mark Daigneault at plus 130 is most likely to win the award? Do we have a disagreement on that?
No, I agree.
Okay. So let's get to best value. And I will let Jim go first since I stepped all over his cap in the first one. Jim, what do you think? What's the best value for Coach of the Year right now?
So I kind of have there's a coach that we can bring up that I would want to talk about, but I think that the best value is also a potentially tasty CLV bet because it's kind of in the longer shot range, and I'm kind of surprised it's still in the longer shot range. And I think maybe because all these awards are narrative, there's a little bit of a stink on this guy still, which is understandable. But Ime Udoka has done an incredible job in Houston. For him to be 30-1, I think is really, really long. I mean, they added, they brought in some veteran players, which will stabilize a younger team, but they look really good. And right now, by Basketball Reference, their playoff probabilities, they have Houston finishing the season as the 6th seed in the West. If Houston makes the playoffs straight out without even having to go into the play-in tournament, I don't know how Udoka isn't in the very close conversation for this award. They're like the classic overachieving. The Thunder and Wolves, they are overachieving, but to a degree, they are young teams that are fulfilling promise that, I think you can make the case for the players blossoming pretty easily, whereas this Houston team looked shambles last year, and now they look like a really professional team that has an elite defense and wins close games. And if they're the 6th in the West, I don't think there's any way Udoka ends the season at 30-1 in this.
I agree with the CLV matter on this. I think he can make the ballot. I think the question is, what are the odds of a lot of this honestly is, can Houston maintain to stay in this range? And if the Thunder drop a little, or the Wolves, or both, if they drop but they still finish above the Rockets, what does that do? And I think that's going to be kind of the question. There's also, I will say, there's a number of measures, mostly offensive, that kind of suggest that Houston might slide a little bit. They might just I think it'll be a little tough for them to maintain. What's you got something, Jim?
Yeah, I'll just say I think that you could make the same case for OKC though. Their shooting right now is absolutely out of this world, and I think they have great shooters. They have the best shooting coach, but I think their offense is going to slide a little bit as well. And Minnesota, we're already starting to see a little bit of a slide from them on both ends. So I think you bring up a very good point that it is hard to look at a team that's lower in the standings and vote for the coach that is below 2 other candidates directly opposed to him. But I do think, if we look at just from a preseason Vegas win total, I think the Wolves and Thunder were both at Thunder maybe 42.5, Wolves 44.5, something like that. Rockets, I remember I was on the under at 29.5, and now there's a decent chance they end up in the 40s. So I think if it's close, I think if the Wolves and Thunder are in the 50s, it is a tough case. But I do think we see potential sliding from both. And at 30-1, I think it's at least worth a look right now.
I can't get there on betting it. I think it's one of those where it's like it's good CLV, but I just don't think he's going to finish top two. Like I do believe in the Thunder enough for him to get there. I'll say the best value is actually still Mark Daigneault at plus 130. I think getting him at a plus number. A lot of it, honestly, for me is the narrative side of this, where I think Chris Finch might honestly be a better coach. Like what Chris Finch is having to do, people don't really understand. Like he made the two big the worst trade of all time. This is the worst trade of all. And like, it turns out if you just have good coaching, you can figure it out and make it work. Also, Tim Connelly was a little bit ahead of the curve in terms of two bigs being viable because it's the rage now. Everyone wants two bigs. Like Chris Finch is a hell of a coach. I think Chris Finch is actually a better like in-game coach than Mark Daigneault, and Daigneault's really good. He makes very good tactical decisions. But I do think that the narrative of taking a team as young as OKC is and making them a top 3 seed is really impressive. Now, maybe it winds up being, Nuggets, Clippers, Wolves, and the Thunder slide to 4. And if the Rockets are 5, then you're going to be in a great spot. But even in that case, maybe Wolves pull ahead. Andrew, I want to ask you, who do you think is the best value right now for this award?
I actually put down Nick Nurse at 2,100. He's a first-year coach, first year with this team, which is good for this award. I think we could see if Embiid doesn't get that MVP, that second MVP, but the Sixers remain really good, especially if Embiid misses a lot of games as a result of, and that's why he doesn't get the MVP, and the Sixers are still good. I think people are going to start to want to give them some sort of award. From a narrative perspective, they might say, okay, well, how can we reward this team if it's not Embiid? And I think, obviously we'll talk about Maxey for MIP a little later, but Nick Nurse could be a recipient of that. I will say it's more of a numbers play, just at plus 2,100. But I do think that he actually does fit the profile of someone that could win this award.
Okay. I'll say this. They're going to have to win. I don't think he can get there with the Celtics that far ahead. I just think it's going to be tough when it's like, it's one of those where you don't want to, they're not going to want to vote for Missoula because Missoula's not very good. And so if they're not going to vote for Missoula, who has a better record, they're going to be like, well, neither one of them. And also it'll just be like, look, the Sixers were good. They have an MVP. Like how you can't be the coach of the year if you walked into a situation where you had the MVP.
Well, but what if you have the MVP and lost a former MVP in the offseason? Can you win it then?
No, because it's James Harden and no one thinks he's that good. So that's the other problem there. My long shot, this is not a long shot per se, because he is third on the list, but it's plus 750. It's Jamal Mosley. What he's doing right now is the most important thing. Like they got an overtime win versus the Hawks tonight. This team is like, they're zombies. Like they're missing, like they were without Franz and Fultz and like half of Isaac, half the roster is out. And Jamal Mosley is like throwing Jalen Suggs, Cole Anthony, and Paolo together and making shit happen with like Goga. Like it's crazy. Like they lost WCJ for 2 months essentially and maintain this. If the Magic make a playoff spot with this roster, with how many injuries they have, Jamal Mosley's probably got pretty good value. Jim, is your long shot the same? Or
there it is, but I wanted to bring up one other name just very briefly, and just it's Rick Carlisle, who I think a lot of Buckets people are on probably from before the season. And I don't think I would bet it today, but I do want to see the Pacers quietly. Their defense has actually been pretty solid of late. They're seventh best defense in the last 2 weeks. If that sticks, they are going to fly up the standings, and it could get interesting. I don't think I would bet it today. I don't think the defense is going to stick, but it doesn't have to be a top 7 defense. Even if it's just a top half defense, that team's going to be pretty interesting. And maybe it's, maybe this isn't even the award to focus on for it, but I think it's something to put on people's radar. They've been talking about it a lot. It's been a point of emphasis. It's not just, a couple, and maybe it just be a fluke, but it's definitely a point of emphasis for them. And it has had success in recent weeks. So just something to keep an eye on.
Andrew, do you have a long shot?
I'd put Willie Green down. I
Nice.
don't think. Yeah, I think I think this Pelicans could be good enough to where you start having to talk about him. I think the reason I'm actually not really there with Mosley and Carlisle or Udoka, just because I don't think that they're going to win enough games. You have to win a lot of games to win this award. And right now, even, back to Udoka just briefly, like even if they don't slip, they're on pace for 43.4 wins. That's the Rockets. The Pelicans are currently on pace for about 48 wins. I guess maybe 49 now. And you kind of have to hit that 50 win threshold for this to be a serious conversation. And, I think this is sort of the Pelicans are sort of, or Willie Green rather, is sort of Zion proof. If he goes down and they're still good, which they have proven to play well without Zion, then that only bolsters his case more. If he plays, their ceiling is higher. So I like him at, I think you mentioned an even higher number. I saw 42-1.
Yeah, there's a higher number out there. It's, let's see, 55-1 at one book.
Yeah.
So I want to push back on one thing. Tibbs won it in 2021 at a 46 win pace. So the key is you either need to win a shit ton of games, or you need to take a roster that nobody thinks is that good and make them a playoff team.
Well, like Mike Brown did it last year with 48 as well.
Right.
True.
So like you don't need to get to 50. I think at 45 is the min. I think you're gonna have a hard time if you don't get to 45. A long shot that I will mention here is, how about Michael Malone at 120-1? If the Nuggets were to secure the 1 seed in back-to-back seasons, I know that he's got the 2-time reigning MVP, so it's like, okay, Nurse can't win it with Embiid. This award sometimes is delayed, where it's like, like we haven't really appreciated, and like Michael Malone's never won it. He's gone over his fucking win total every single year. They've been in the playoffs every year. Lose Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. in the playoffs. Like, doesn't matter. Wins a title, no recognition. Like he's never talked about it even as a top 5 coach. And like that's gonna sound like a homer considering I cover the team and I'm known to be a bit I am Mo positive, but I do legitimately think that if the Thunder and Wolves were to all of a sudden like combust and fall back down to earth, and you're not going to vote for Missoula, if the Nuggets are the 1 seed again, there might be a little bit of like should we like maybe recognize that like Malone's maybe the best coach in the league? Like there might be a little bit of that conversation. That would be my long shot play. Let's go to Rookie of the Year. This one will breeze through. It's a 2-man race. Like congrats to Jaime Jaquez for his 3rd place finish. Good job for you. As always being the guy that Joe Cronin could have traded for in the eyes of Heat fans. That's actually, they should put that on the back of his jersey, is guy Joe Cronin could have traded for.
That can be the paragraph in the paint instead of the Heat culture paint.
Yeah, there you go. It's Chet or Victor. Chet's the favorite right now. This is bounced back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. I'll be honest with you, Jim. I don't know. I know Victor's starting to miss a bunch of games, but I didn't know who to put for most likely to win here. I don't know like who is likely to win. Chet's the favorite. It seems like Chet, but that might just be me reading the market and being like it's Chet. Like I'm very curious to know you guys' thoughts on this. Who do you think is likely to win this award?
So I've got the most likely to win as Duop Reith. No, I do love Duop Reith, and he has no number. I want to bet him somewhere. No, I actually do think it's Wemby. So for a couple of reasons here, this is a award that notoriously does not favor advanced stats, and advanced stats love Chet. But by counting stats, Wemby has big edges right now: points, rebounds, blocks. And I think one thing that's quietly pretty big is Trey Jones is now in the starting lineup there. And Wemby has had 2 really good games with Jones as the point guard. We have known how bad like it has been a joke that, it's Pop secretly trying to tank by keeping Sohan in the starting lineup. And now we finally get to see Trey Jones with Wemby, and Wemby looks really good suddenly. I think that the gap between their surface level stats is only going to grow throughout the season. And then by the end of the season, those advanced numbers that are, Chet looks amazing. He does, and he is playing amazing. And if this was MVP, I think I'd have a different answer. But for Rookie of the Year, I think the surface level stats of Wemby come the end of the season are going to be what the difference is, and I think why he'll win the award.
Okay, that's a compelling case. I have Victor as the best value right now, simply because whichever one of these guys is the plus number, you should just keep betting. And every time it flips, just bet the plus number, because it's going to be one of these two guys, and you can just keep racking up the portfolio value on them. Andrew, what are your thoughts on this one?
I mean, Jim pretty much said everything I was going to say, except less emphatically. I think, I don't understand why Wemby is not the favorite. He is winning in all the stats that matter, and he's the generational prospect. Like, we've been talking, all we've been doing all summer is talk about Wemby, and now he's scoring more points, getting more rebounds, stealing and blocking more than Chet. Like, if it's even close, it's going to Wemby, just not to mention the fact that Chet is basically in his sophomore season. He had that redshirt year. So if it's close, I think it's going to Wemby. And like Jim very astutely pointed out, I think that the gap in those stats is only going to widen. I think I'm absolutely betting Wemby the second the awards come back up. It's pretty much when we get off this podcast, I'm betting Wemby. So yeah.
So as I try and spell his name right as I look up some stat on him. All right, he's missed 5 games, so that's fine. He's got 13 left this season to miss. I will say this: Chet's like top 5 on the odds for Defensive Player of the Year, and Chet like has a legitimate case. Like, we'll talk about TPOY in a second. He has a legitimate case, and like Victor does too. Like, these two guys are top 5 in blocks and stocks and all of these things as rookies. It's ridiculous. It's insane. It would be a massive break from tradition of this award to give it to Chet Holmgren, because you're effectively saying winning matters.
Yeah.
Like, that's what you would be saying. Is you would be saying winning now matters for this award. Just this year, it matters. On the other hand, I want to relate this to another award, which was Sixth Man of the Year typically goes to the guy that scores the most points off the bench for a playoff team, and that was not the case last year. Brogdon won it by having the best impact stats. We honestly might be entering into an era where these impact stats wind up deciding stuff when it's just like, well, I don't know, so I guess it's this, and Chet's going to get him there. Like,
it's
if you're
a really
able
good
to,
take.
And I'll say this, like, the most influential person in NBA award voting is Zach Lowe, who I've known a long time and is the best NBA reporter on earth. Like, Zach, I think, would probably be, I don't know, he hasn't said anything, but I'm going to expect that if Zach gets into it, he's going to be like, look, Chet Holmgren made a massive impact for a team that made the playoffs and was a huge reason why they made the playoffs. The Lakers won, by the way. So good on job on us for actively. We should have just been live betting the Lakers while we were saying all the positive things on this podcast. So all that's to say that I think that Chet is very live. I understand why you guys are emphatic on Wembanyama, and I don't disagree that the history of this award says you need to be vetting Victor. I just kind of continue to think that this thing is shifted. It's hilarious. Like, Wembanyama has a 30-point game. Wembanyama's the favorite, minus 130. Chet goes to plus 150. Chet comes back the next night, has 5 blocks and hits the dagger 3. Chet's the favorite, minus 130. Victor's plus 125. Like, just keep taking those coins and nickels that we get on the plus money all the way through, because it's going to be one of these two guys, and barring injury, I think that we can agree on that. Do either of you want to try and make a case for me for a long shot? I'm not going to really. I will give you like 15 seconds to make the case. Do either of you have one?
Duop Reith is 4th in cleaning the glass on off.
Moving on. Defensive player of the year. Rudy is minus 145 to win this award at one book. I think it's safe to say that the best defensive player on the best defensive team has to be considered the most likely to win. Do we have a disagreement?
No.
Okay. So Rudy Gobert is most likely to win if they vote today and for the season. I was kind of soft on Rudy's chances based off of, I was like, look, if you really get into it, there's a lot of reasons this team is great defensively. Like, they're an incredible defensive unit. Like, Ant's on-off numbers are terrific, and his impact numbers are awesome. Jaden McDaniels is one of the best perimeter defenders in the NBA. Mike Conley is healthy and having a great defensive season. Cat has given them good minutes. Like, all of these things are true. And then I heard Eric Spoelstra basically wax for about 7 minutes about why Rudy Gobert is the most influential defender on the best defensive team in the league. And I was like, well, shit. And like, granted, not all the voters are going to have heard that speech from Spo, but it does kind of reinforce the reasons why I can try and justify that this number is not right. I will keep saying this. They're 14th in defense, so they're ways off. They got to jump 10 spots. I will say that my best value is Anthony Davis because I would just keep betting it. Plus 950. They want to vote for this guy more than any other human on the planet. They want to reward Anthony Davis. They want to give Anthony Davis the recognition as the best defender in the NBA on the 14th best defense in the league for a team under 500. Like, they just badly want to give this guy his flowers. And so if they were to get back to a top 5 spot, also from a legitimacy standpoint, Davis leads the league in stocks. He leads the league in blocks plus steals. That's a very easy metric for him to be able to impact things. The impact numbers don't necessarily line up the way they do with the other ones. What's interesting about this award, and I want you guys to give me your two at the same time, the best value and long shot. But what I think is really interesting is when we look at the top 5 defenses, we've got Minnesota, we've got Boston, who doesn't have a legitimate candidate because they're all too good. We've got Orlando, who doesn't have a legitimate candidate because they don't have a shot blocker, and it's all basically Jalen Suggs, who doesn't show up on the stat sheet, and actually his synergy stuff isn't great either. Philly, who I know we'll talk about, and then the Cleveland Cavaliers, who, again, it's just like a collective thing. Jared Allen, I tried to bet him last year. He's never going to get recognition for what Jared Allen does defensively. So the top 5 defenses, the only team that has a viable candidate is either the Wolves, or we can get to Embiid and the Sixers. Jim, let's start with, are you going back to the well for like the 8th time I've asked you about this award?
Going back to the well, baby. I still think Embiid at 16-1 is, because this is such a weird award right now, because there really aren't good candidates beyond Rudy. So I mean, Rudy should be, I think he should probably be even a heavier favorite, but he also could very easily get hurt and miss some games. And this isn't a award where there tends to be voter fatigue. In fact, it tends to be the opposite. It tends to be very sticky year to year. So Rudy is definitely the favorite. But at 16-1, I still think Embiid does have value. He is the big man on the top 5 defense. And again, I see this as a way to not give him MVP, but give him an award. But I think you and I need to start the revolution here, though, that guards and wings can be defenders to win this award. Because I look at like a Herb Jones or Jalen Suggs, like some of these guys, Drew Holiday even, he didn't look great against Shea recently, but these guys who are playing outstanding defense and are just, being written off because it has to be big man best defense. So I come back to Embiid, but only because these are the rules laid out in front of me and I'm trying to read what will be bet. I still think that, the Herb Joneses and Jalen Suggs of the world should be in the conversation. I have Suggs as my tasty CLV, even though I don't even know if he'll actually get CLV. He just is a defender that I want to bring up at any and all times.
He's so goddamn good. I watched him absolutely just give Jamal Murray hell.
Unbelievable against him.
I tweeted this. He lives in a constant state of in your shirt. Like, he is in your fucking threads every night. He's amazing. Andrew, who do you think is the best value right now, and what's your long shot?
I was looking long and hard at Embiid as well. I won't go over it. Jim has covered that for plenty of episodes. But yeah, Embiid was my best value, but honestly, Gobert, I echoed the Gobert sentiments. My long shot was the reigning DPOY, Jaren Jackson Jr. at 38-1. I think it's narratively, it's a little bit too like iffy. I think because they're so bad offensively, and they just because they're not a good team, it's going to be hard to like give him defensive player in the year 2 years in a row with such a terrible team. But I think at 38-1, it's a good CLV bet. If the Grizz can kind of turn things around, they beat the Suns without Ja today, but if they can turn things around and they make the playoffs, I think he's got a solid case, although it's definitely one of those CLV bets.
My CLV bet is another wing. It's OG Anunoby. 30-1 for OG. In his 136 minutes that he's played with the New York Knicks, just a whopping 136 minutes. The defense is 38.6 points better than they are without him. So that seems good.
Good.
Look, he sold me last year. I was always kind of like, okay, OG's good, but he's not like elite. Like this is a little bit overstated. And then I really sat down and watched him last year, and I was like, holy fuck, this guy's amazing. He's an incredible defender. If anybody is going to win the award as not a center or a big, it's going to have to be a guy from a very large, high-profile market, like Marcus Smart did with the Celtics. If the New York Knicks were to make a sudden and drastic climb from middle of the pack to elite defensively, and OG, if it was like before the trade and after the trade, that could help them a lot. I actually do think there's a little bit of value on OG, even though it's a not a big.
If the Knicks defense drastically improves post trade, which may or may not have to do with OG Anunoby, Isaiah Hartenstein is actually first in DPM right now. Just throwing that out there.
Yep.
But if I agree with that a lot. I was actually looking at that. I thought his odds would be longer though, which is kind of why I didn't go with him.
Which by the way is kind of funny that with Isaiah Hartenstein, because we talked about in this pod with the future Jays about Mitchell Robinson. Like that
exactly.
That was our big like, oh, we gotta get on Mitchell Robinson.
Yeah.
Poor bitch got hurt. Sixth man of the year. I have most likely to win ? I have no fucking clue on this award. All of the candidates are terrible. The history of this award says it needs to be a guy that scores a shit ton for a playoff team. Our options on that are real fucking limited at this point. Bogdan Bogdanovic is your closest candidate. If the Hawks were to get their shit together, do you want to bet that the Hawks are going to get their shit together? Because I do not. Like, Tim Hardaway Jr. was a favorite for a long time and is technically like leading the most for a playoff team, technically speaking. So I guess it's Tim Hardaway Jr. I just can't see anyone being like, oh yeah, no, Tim Hardaway Jr. was the best reserve in the NBA this season. I don't see that happening. I have lots of thoughts on how to bet this award, Andrew, but I have no clue about like what this market is right now.
Yeah, this one took a long time to parse through for me. Jim has a great article about this award, and he's been doing a really good job of following that. But yeah, my best value, the one that I saw that felt the best, and just because it's the closest to what we've seen in the past, is Malik Monk at plus 500. He's probably not going to ever get to the starting lineup. They just had a swap. They just moved Herder away from the starting lineup and put in Chris Duarte. So if Monk is not going to go in for Herder and going to get passed by Chris Duarte, I feel like he's pretty solidly going to come off the bench for the rest of the season. But to me, he's just the closest to that kind of Lou Will, Jamal Crawford type, which maybe we're moving away from, as you mentioned, with the Brogdon last year. But to me, he seemed like the best value at plus 500.
Okay, that's an interesting one. Jim, what are your thoughts on where this award is at right now?
Yeah, so I have the most likely to win right now as the best value, and it's Bogdan. That's where I came down at least. And the Hawks part of it is the sketchiest part of it, to be honest. But like you said, we have five favorites, and they're all within a 2-point, very very tiny 2-point radius of each other by adjusted net rating. So none of these players are on good teams of the favorites, and I think that Bogdan of that group, He's scoring the most right now per game. He's scoring the most by far over the last month. He's up at 20 points a game over last month. He does have decent impact stats. The Hawks are better with him on the court, if that's something that we are now weighing. But this is a really weird award right now. So I think it's not going to move. That number is not going to move a ton. So I think gathering information is the best value right now. I think waiting to see a little bit. Now, some people may have bets that they want to leverage. I talked about that in the article a little bit. THJ was one who you were able to get a really long number. So leveraging that right now, I think is a good play, because I also don't see him ending the year as the winner. So if you have Tim Hardaway, maybe do hop on to Bogdan. But I think gathering information is maybe the best value right now.
The best value I have right now is Cole Anthony. So 14.5 points per game, has led them to wins in the absence of Fultz. So he gets kind of that credit. There is kind of a history of the award of guys that have like stepped up when guys have been injured and done the job, as long as they don't start enough games. And he has not started enough games to hurt him in that category. Look, it's only 14.4 points per game, only 3.5 assists. Like, the numbers aren't there, but I did notice that his BPM is absolutely incredible, in large part because of the defensive stuff. But if you're just going to be like, if we just say Bogdan's not going to win because it's got to be for a guy on a playoff team, because that's been the history of the award. If we start there, then I get to Cole at plus 900. And I also say, like, there's probably room for Cole to shoot better, for him to like move a little bit up the board, for him to actually have some bigger games and have like bump this up to 15, 16. If he gets up to like 15 points per game, 15 and 5, say, 15 and 4, then I legitimately think there's a chance he wins. My long shot, and this is in your favorites section too, it's Naz Reid. 30-1. Just there's what's the case against Naz, Jim?
I put him and Portis in the same category of big men don't often win this award, in part because they don't really get very flashy numbers. I think Naz Reid's at like 12-6 maybe right now, and that's just for this award. I you did bring up the point that last year, maybe we see somewhat of a shift away from just the pure looking, control sort by points. Mm-hmm. But I still think that's going to be if Bogdan ends the year averaging 19 points a game and Naz Reid is at 12-6, even if the Wolves stay in the top half of the West and the Hawks are kind of floundering near the play-in, I do think that's a pretty big gap to have to overcome.
Yeah, I think for me, it's like, compare Naz's numbers to Montrezl Harrell, and Trez had such bigger raw production numbers, so it would take a bump. This is where I will tell you, like, this all kind of tell you shouldn't be betting this award. Like, you shouldn't be betting this award right now. This is not the time to bet it. Andrew, do you have a long shot?
I put your guy from last year, Norman Powell, 45-1.
If he wins this year, I'm going to be really pissed off. I'm just going to let you know that right now.
Well, you could sprinkle a little right now, and you don't have to overcommit.
I did look at this, which is top 5 in BPM for guys that have started at least 20 or have played at least 20 and started less than 10, less than 11 rather. Guess who leads in BPM? Do you guys know the answer to this amongst those guys?
Is it Bogdan?
Kelly Olynyk.
Oh, I would not have gotten that.
Kelly Olynyk.
It would take me many guesses to get there.
Who is averaging 13.5 points per 75 possessions. So
who's the leader among players who are going to be on a playoff team?
Malik Monk, 2.2.
Ah, that's interesting.
Hey.
Sarge is at 1.9, Quickly's at 1.9, and Nas is at 1.9.
What were the
kind of numbers?
What were the parameters again?
I went with played more than 20 games, started less than 10.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. So this one is very much like, of all these awards, this is we don't know what the fuck to tell you.
Yeah.
Like, we'll know later.
Well, even last year, like, Quickly just kind of came out of nowhere, and you were just like, "Oh, okay, Quickly,
yeah,
cool, yeah,
yeah." All right. Quick, and then they were just finally went up with going with Brogdon, because they were just like, "Oh,
yeah,
well, the Celtics are really good."
Yep.
So, Peyton Pritchard, come on down, I guess. Most improved player. Finally, we'll wrap this up. This one's gonna be pretty easy. Okay. Tyrese Maxey is the favorite to win. I don't even need to ask the guys this. Like, it's if they voted today, it'd be Tyrese Maxey. He's the most likely to win. He's minus 210 for a reason, etc. I will continue to say that if Tyrese Halliburton, if we see two guys out of Embiid, Jokic, Shea, Luka, Giannis, if two of those guys drop off, Tyrese Halliburton is going to be in this conversation right to the end. And there's going to be a lot of debate about, like, I knew that Hallie was awesome. I'm not voting for Hallie. I knew that he was awesome. But we also knew that Tyrese Maxey was really good. Like, we knew that he was good. He got injured last year, and now, honestly, and he was playing for Doc Rivers. And so, like, he didn't have the opportunity that he deserved. Ja Morant won this award by going from, oh, no, yeah, Ja's awesome. Like, number 2 pick. He's awesome. To, oh, shit, Ja's like an MVP candidate. Tyrese Halliburton would go from, oh, yeah, like, Tyrese is awesome. He's an all-star. To, oh, shit, Tyrese is literally the engine of a playoff team and the number 2 offense in the NBA. So Halliburton at 16-1, I cannot do anything but say that he is the best value on the board, Jim.
That's exactly what I had, and very similar logic. I'll only add that maybe this is where we think a little bit about that Pacers defensive bump, and if they are able to have that, even 15th ranked defense, this is a team that could easily be in the mid to high 40s for wins. I think that only helps his case that I think a lot of people really do like the jump from star to megastar. I think some people roll their eyes on it, but I think for some people that is how they see this award. And I was actually kind of amazed to see him at 16-1 when I was looking through this award. I think there is value there right now, even though Maxey is the prohibitive favorite. We're so early in the season that, missed games could very easily swing this, or just a narrative change over the next few months.
Andrew, what do you think is the best value on the board?
Honestly, I had Maxey as best value, even as much of a favorite as he is. He just checks every single box. The only thing he doesn't is maybe not big enough of a leap, but I feel like he checks the most boxes for me. But I do really like what you guys all just said about Halliburton. I think he's a really strong look as well.
Okay, what's your long shot? CLV, what's that CLV gonna taste like?
I had Emmanuel Quickly.
Yo,
sure,
same.
Did you really?
Wow.
Yes. All right, let's go.
I gotta get some new fucking people on this podcast.
Yeah, maybe I'm just feeling a little sad that he left the Knicks, but I think Emmanuel Quickly, because here's the thing. I think he could absolutely just pop off the face of the planet in Toronto. And it's going to be, narratively speaking, I want to hear what Jim says, but narratively speaking, there's, he was shunned in New York. He was sent north of the border to play in Toronto, and he's absolutely shining. He's averaging 20 points per game with the Raptors. That would have to get even higher, but I think he's going to get the opportunity. I think he's going to get the usage, and I think he's a great look at 125-1.
Jim?
Yeah, I echo a lot of what Andrew just said. And, Andrew mentioned he'd have to increase his scoring. His shooting actually hasn't been all that good with Toronto. So it would only take a little bit of regression to the positive mean if he's able to keep up the usage and field goal attempts that he's gotten in Toronto in a tiny sample so far. But he's averaging 5 rebounds, 5 assists as well. It's a guy who, was close to winning an award last year. So I think sometimes there's a little bit of like, oh, you were on our mind last year. You're on our mind again this year. So that's really funny. I mean, it's not, again, this is the tasty CLV bet, but to end on a very aligned Emmanuel Quickly tasty CLV MIP, I love that.
What's funny is I have his teammate. I have Scotty Barnes, 16.
Oh, yeah.
As the long shot. So if you think the Raptors have upside and they just knocked off the Warriors and absolutely fucking demolished them because the Warriors are a joke, I cannot wait to get to get Brandon Anderson back on this podcast after football for us to talk about the Warriors. It was our biggest disagreement point. I cannot wait. I'm going to do a whole hey, you've been gone. Let me tell you about what's been going on in the NBA. We're going to start with funny story about the Warriors. but like Scotty Barnes, he has made a huge leap in my eyes in terms of his control. The numbers he's putting up are ridiculous. He is the best player. He is the engine of that team. They are not good right now, but if they were to make a run, if quickly and if this trade were to shape things, now the opposite can happen. They can trade Siakam and just go the other direction. Like that can happen pretty quickly. But if they were to make a run, like this is an upside thing. Is like if we look at trade season and we want to go upside, I think Scotty Barnes has a lot of potential. It would be interesting to see like who would they vote for, Scotty Barnes or Emmanuel Quickly, depending on those two. And so
do we care if they're good or not, though? I mean, Lowry Markkinen won last year on the Jazz. I mean, they overperformed a bit, but they weren't a great team.
Yeah, but I think they got to get to like 39 versus like a 34 win pace. Like that's what they got to do. Right. That's got to do it for Buckets. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you guys being with us and hanging in for this episode. We want to get through all the awards. You can catch Jim Turvey on Twitter and in the Action Network app at TurveyBets. Andrew is at AOWatts13. Yes,
nailed it.
I got it.
Nailed it.
Bam. My thanks to David Payne, our producer, as well as Hutton Jackson, the video crew, for putting this up on youtube.com/The Action Network. We'll be back tomorrow with Best Bets. Jay Money's back in the house tomorrow, along with Brian Fonseca. Make sure to tune in for that. We'll be back all throughout this week. Sean and I will check in on win totals and playoff futures on the Friday episode. Have yourselves a great week. Until we meet again, let's get buckets.